In some ways, there's never been an easier way to get your work out there, but it does feel like getting a cookbook deal with a traditional publisher becomes more challenging each year. In this episode, we're going to talk about one alternative, and that's hybrid publishing. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for writers, readers, and cooks. I'm Kristin Donnelly, and today I'm here with co-host Kate Leahy. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Kristin.
So, what do you think? Does it feel like it's harder than ever to get a book deal?
You know, I would have said no last year, but now thinking about it, I think I'm going to say yes. And this brings me back when we had Jessie Sheehan on the podcast earlier this year. She brought up a point that she didn't think she would have been able to publish the first book she published nowadays. She thinks that she just at that time did not have the kind of platform that a publisher would want now. But back in the day, they weren't looking for a huge platform. They just wanted somebody who had the skills to execute, say, an icebox cake book or a vintage cake book. She could sell the idea on the idea alone.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did that in my past where I've done books where I sold the idea on the idea alone. It wasn't because of my following. I don't know if that works anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't know if Modern Potluck would be published, or certainly not necessarily by the same publisher. While platform mattered, and I feel like I had a way to reach an audience through, already writing for publications, but my social numbers were not where they needed to be or where they would need to be today.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I guess there's also the issue that it seems like there's fewer editors, potentially fewer publishers interested in cookbooks, but that's always changing. But one constantly evolving segment of publishing is hybrid publishing. I know it's something that we have talked about wanting to dig deeper on, and we were kind of waiting for the right person to talk to. And earlier this year, we heard from Vasudha Viswanath. She published this beautiful book called The Vegetarian Reset, and she actually pitched us saying, hey, I did this in not the usual way. I went through a hybrid publisher, and would you want to talk about that? And we were like, yes, yes, yes. I personally got even more excited once I saw the book. It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it is.
There's so many vegetarian cookbooks out there. It has an even more interesting niche because it's vegetarian and lower carb. And her recipes are just very appealing.
Really appealing. I was flagging a bunch that I want to make because I've even been asked sometimes where people think, I want to eat more vegetarian. And there are ways to tell them, oh, it's not that hard. But then you have this book that kind of just lays it out. And what's really great about it, too, is that Vasudha really thought about the visuals. There's icons in it. There's a Venn diagram.
I love the Venn diagram.
Right. It's a very, very polished book. If I saw this sitting on a shelf, I would not have thought this was a first-time author who basically taught herself how to do a book while doing it. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her about how this book really came together and why she decided that hybrid publishing was the way to go.
Agree.
Just to be clear on what hybrid publishing is, when we talked to Nick in episode 47, we talked a lot about self-publishing. And I remember Kristin, he told us if he talked to 100 people about self-publishing, 99 people would say, not for me. So one of the things that's nice about self-publishing is you get to keep all the profits. Anything you make after the price of the printing costs and all that, you get to keep. Well, hybrid publishing, it's a little different, and it probably varies on each hybrid publisher, but you still sort of, as an author, you bear the upfront costs of producing the book. However, you get the benefit of working with a team of professionals, having that sales and distribution channel. But again, I think it varies on the hybrid publisher, and people who have done hybrid publishing, it's best if you're interested to ask them who they used, making sure you're not going to, say, get scammed, because that's a lot of money to put up front.
Yeah. Is that a risk, getting scammed?
Apparently there's some warnings online that, some hybrid publishers are not really hybrid. They're just basically thinly veiled
scam operations.
Yeah, like with old vanity presses back in the day. So there's some warning things online, but there also are hybrid publishers, and there's a few we'll link to that do cookbooks. Just a little warning out there.
Well, I'm excited to hear from Vasudha and her experience and what she has to say. Welcome, Vasudha, to Everything Cookbooks.
Thank you for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here because I've been listening to your podcast from the beginning and I've learned so much. So thanks for having me on.
Sure. So we'd love just for you to take us back to before you wrote your book. Tell us what got you writing about food in the first place.
Yeah, so there were two things that happened in my life that catalyzed this move for me. One was a personal health journey that transformed the way that I cook and that I eat, and more importantly, how I felt. And so I really wanted to share that and try to help people, especially today that so many people are trying to eat plant-based, and it doesn't always mean the same thing as eating healthy. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. The second thing that happened was that my work situation changed. I had worked for over a decade on Wall Street, for most of it at a hedge fund doing business strategy. The firm was doing badly for a number of years and my position was restructured. I did have other opportunities in the field, but, after the pandemic, like a lot of people, I was really rethinking, how I could kind of move forward with like more meaning to what I did. I was never really that passionate about the field itself. So I was like, oh, you know what? I had this idea to write a book. It would be like a great 3-month project. So I'm going to like knock it out, no time like the present. And then, I'll move on and get a real job and move on. So that was really kind of what started it all. And, hopefully it continues to be a longer career in the culinary field.
So when you were still working at the hedge fund, were you bringing great lunches to work? Were you one of those people or?
Definitely not. I commuted like 3 hours a day to work. So I was, we would order in lunch at work and at home. I would try to cook in the evenings, but I would get back pretty late. So we would order in a lot. And this was before I had kids. So, we would order in a lot. Weekends, I would cook a lot. I've always loved cooking, like all my life. So, yeah, I was not taking those delicious lunches to work.
You had no time. No time to do it.
Yeah. So you have a Substack.
I do.
It started in 2021, I believe. And then your book came out earlier this year. But you said you thought it would be a 3-month project. So I'd love to know, did the Substack start first? Or were you actually starting to work on the book first and then it just took much longer than you thought?
Yeah. So when I decided to do this, I didn't even think about blogging or anything. Although I'd cooked, it was usually just for family and friends. I'd never blogged, social media, always a lurker, that just wasn't me. So the minute I thought about this project, I liked the idea of a book because it felt like a substantial body of work. I like, strategic work that I can kind of plan towards and build towards, as opposed to kind of living like a recipe at a time. So I had just decided to write the book, and the Substack and social media started alongside that as a proof of concept because, I had never really shared what I was doing before, and I wanted to see if anybody cared. It was more kind of moving in parallel along with my writing the book. And obviously, like you guys well know, writing a book is not a 3-month project. It took well over a year. And then finally, from start to end, when the book actually came out, it was about 2 years.
About right,
Right. So tell us a little bit just about your cookbook journey. So you have this idea, you want to write this book. Was your idea to write the whole thing or write a proposal and find an agent? Tell us about how you were sort of learning about what you really wanted to do and how you were going to put this book out in the world.
Sure. So, I think I literally started with Googling how to write a cookbook. Pretty sure I can go back in my Google search and see something there. But I quickly discovered that there were roughly 2 ways to do it, the traditional way or self-publish. At the time, I thought this was going to be like 3 months, 5 months tops. And I just didn't, see the time to pitch an agent and maybe somebody would take me on. And I had no platform or anything. So I don't know why anybody would take me on. And then spend I don't know how long pitching a publisher, this whole thing could take years before I could even start the project. And, I was kind of obsessed with it. I just wanted to get it out. So I chose self-publishing because it just seemed like I would have control over the whole thing and I could do it my way and it's okay. I can get my hands dirty, figure things out. But yeah, I mean, I knew nothing about it. I knew nobody in the field. So I didn't really, I couldn't go to anyone to really ask questions. So there was just a lot of kind of research, a lot of cold emails. And then eventually, it kind of started to come together.
And then ultimately you discovered hybrid publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was quite, late in the journey. So I had spent almost a whole year, say like 9 to 10 months producing this book. So I had completely intended to self-publish. I was going to use the Amazon KDP platform and the Ingram Spark platform together and have a hardcover, maybe a paperback, and like an ebook. And I'd hired freelancers along the way to do design and a copy editor as well. And I'd found a brilliant photographer. So, I knew I had put together a quality product. At the very end, when I was like a couple of months away, so the book was, in the galleys or whatever it is we call it, it was ready to go pretty much, maybe like a month away. And then I had started to agonize a little bit about distribution because I thought this was, it had turned out to be really beautiful beyond my dreams. And I couldn't even get the kind of paper or quality that even if I was willing to pay for it. And I'd heard all of these stories about, print on demand services printing like a page upside down and the cover backwards and things like that. Occasionally, I think it happens, not a lot, but it does. And it freaked me out. And then I was looking for a publicist because I felt that was the one investment that I should make to try to get the word out. I posted on some online forums, and Faith Kramer, who is actually the one of the first authors that my publisher, the Collective Book Studio, worked with. She's written this beautiful book called 52 Shabbats. She responded with a recommendation of a publicist. So I connected with her and we chatted, and we ended up talking a lot more about the publisher and, potentially, was there something? So that's how I got connected to the Collective Book Studio. The founder, Angela Engel, she's lovely. I sent them the manuscript or the galleys, and they really liked it and, were interested in having it on their list. So we worked out a deal.
Cool. So when you're pitching them, you're sending them basically the full designed package, right?
The full book. Yeah, it was like a PDF that was, all of the pages, everything.
Wow.
So it was a pretty advanced stage.
Yeah.
And we did do like another round of editing after that, but it was pretty close to the final.
Wow.
So you had a steep learning curve. That's amazing.
Yeah.
In my head, when I heard you had worked with a hybrid publisher, I thought, okay, she had all these beautiful recipes written. And looking at your book, I really was flagging things I want to make. And I'm not just like, just trying to compliment you. I just really, the food does look, it not only is healthy, but it really has that sort of like beautiful quality that makes you want to eat it.
It's really appealing.
Yeah, it's really appealing. So I was thinking, so she had all these great recipes, and then she worked with a hybrid publisher that paired her with a great photographer, a great designer. But no, you had done that all ahead of time. Yeah,
it was maybe a unique journey. But yeah, I had done most of that ahead of time. The cover was something that, the publisher worked with me and my designer to design. We didn't go with the back cover was actually the front cover when I sent it to them. And then we felt this reflected the book, the spirit of the book more. But yeah, I think, I was lucky to find some really talented professionals in design and photography. And they really helped me, not just do the work, but also they helped guide me along this path because they'd been in the field for much longer.
They ultimately help with printing, sales, distribution, these things that are so hard.
Yeah. So I think, this journey was a little unique in that I saw both the self-publishing side, but just didn't hit publish and then switched over to hybrid publishing. But most hybrid publishers do offer all of those services, and my publisher does too. And so the normal way that somebody would work with them is, pitch them an idea or a manuscript, and then they have a team of really experienced and talented professionals on their side as well. So you would work with them to create the book, go through rounds of editing, design, just like you would with a traditional publisher. And then they own the whole kind of production process of the book, proofing, sending it to the printer, getting it shipped, all of that. And then the unique thing about them, which not every hybrid publisher has, is that they also have a sales team. Now it's Simon & Schuster, I believe, but previously it was IPG. And so, they actually have people that are pitching it to stores. And so my book is in quite a few indie bookstores as well.
If you had gone the self-published route, say everything printed out, you didn't have any upside down pages and that, what do you think that experience would be like? Would you just be up at night worried about sort of inventory and getting books, or are you going to sit with a bunch of books in your living room? What were sort of the fears that veered you to hybrid versus staying in self-published? Because it sounds like you had it, you were ready to go. You were about to, basically hit print.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I was ready to hit print, but I was going with a solution on these platforms, Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark, that offered a print-on-demand service. So literally each book gets printed as it is purchased by the end customer. And so, I'm not sitting with like 1,000 books, and I live in Manhattan. I don't have room for 1,000 books. So that was the model that I was going to go with. I did briefly explore, finding a printer, potentially even working with a printer overseas to get a custom print run done and then store the book. But, all of those logistics of like shipping out I just didn't want to deal with that.
Sense.
So the reason I decided to go with hybrid publishing was I would not have been able to achieve the same quality of printing and paper and all of that I got if I had gone with these print-on-demand services. And I wouldn't have gotten this kind of distribution. My book would have sold on Amazon and maybe a bunch of other websites, but I think it would have been very hard to get into Barnes & Noble or, places like that.
On the Amazon KDP, that would just be the ebook version, and then Ingram Spark would be the print-on-demand service? Or can you tell a little bit about what those different platforms were going to provide for you?
Yeah. So it would definitely be the Kindle version on Amazon KDP, but they do also offer paperback and hardcover options. So at the time, I think I was deciding between the KDP hardcover versus the Ingram hardcover. There were some subtle differences in trim sizes and things like that. But it was kind of that last month of decision making that I had when I then found my publisher. So I ended up not, exploring that fully, but you can do, both hardcover and paperback with both of these platforms, as far as I know.
I want to make sure I understand the hybrid publishing model. It sounds like you're an unusual case where you gave them this almost complete product, but for a lot of people, they might just have a manuscript or an idea, like a proposal. So is the model that usually you pay for some of the publisher services and then share in the revenue?
Correct.
From the sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It might actually help if we, took a step back and talked about all three models. So the traditional model is obviously, what everyone, I think your audience is really familiar with. The publisher bears most of the cost and most of the risk. Usually requires an agent. There's a high level of gatekeeping. They're less likely to accept newer authors. Authors, as I understand it, don't get as much say in the whole process as well. And it takes a while for most authors to earn their royalties because they have to earn out their advance. And correct me if I'm wrong with any of this.
You're summarizing it beautifully.
Okay. On the other extreme, there's self-publishing, which obviously anybody can do it. There's a low barrier to entry. And the author bears the costs of any creative services. So, if you're really scrappy, you can do it all yourself, or you can hire professionals to do it. And you can finance your own print run by finding a printer to work with, or you can choose print-on-demand services like Amazon and Ingram. It can be a pretty lonely journey. I was working by myself for the most part. And, there's nobody to email or ask questions or any of that. And I think often, even if you're willing to pay for the quality, it's not there, or maybe you don't know exactly how things are normally done. So the books might not be, of the same standard. And the hardest part is really getting distribution beyond online, right? Yeah. And so hybrid publishing falls somewhere in the middle. It actually falls throughout that middle because there's a spectrum. So in this case, the author makes that upfront investment in all of the costs of the book, to be honest. So I think most hybrid publishers offer all of those creative services. So editing, design, proofreading, like all of that whole package. And that can cost quite a bit. I guess you could hire your own photographer, or they might give you some recommendations, but that whole thing costs a fair bit. And then you also pay for the print run. So I paid for the cost of actually printing the book. But on the other hand, the publisher is taking low risk. It's not no risk in most cases, it's low risk. So they can afford to take chances on newer authors. The author gets a lot more say in the process in most cases. And my publisher calls it partnership publishing, where they really want to, make the author's vision come true. So, and, it was a really good experience working with them. And in terms of the royalties, you start earning the royalties immediately because there's no advance. You typically also get a higher share of the royalties, as high as 50%. It doesn't necessarily mean you make more. It's just you start earning faster because you took the risk. And yeah, in many cases, I think you keep the copyright. So I own the copyright to my work.
I think that's probably a big one, right? That's one of the things you give away in traditional publishing. Not the copyright so much, but the rights. Like if Penguin Random House owns the rights to a book I've written, if they own, say, the global rights, I can't go to France and sell my book in a translation, but you probably could.
Yeah, I think it depends on every individual contract, but the way that this worked is they license the right to do all of that for a few years. But, after that, I could choose to do what I wanted.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope that was helpful in terms of
thank you for going through all of that.
I know. And apologies for some of the things that have come out of my mouth explaining the process are probably not quite as right. So listen to what Vasudha is telling us and not what I'm saying, because you've been through the process. I think that's really fascinating, though, that it sounds like maybe with hybrid publishing, it can be a little bit of, if you need them to help you with photography, you would pay them, pay the fee. Maybe they pay the photographer or they set you up. But since you already had some of that done, you're not having to pay that for those services with the hybrid publisher, but you would if you were going in with just a manuscript.
Right. And there are other things that publishers do when, in terms of marketing to wholesale. There's like a lot of data, metadata. I think there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes. So it's not like, I still had to pay for some services, but the majority of the book's design was done.
Yeah. So for marketing and publicity, I mean, it's been about 6 months since it's been published, at least once this airs. How's it been?
Yeah, it's a hustle. And I think that's probably the one thing that's common to both traditional and hybrid or self or any model of publishing these days, because I think most authors don't get that much support anyway. So I told myself that my top priority this year would be to promote this book, because I spent so long just getting it out there. And so I just try to show up every day and do something, to try to sell more books and get the word out there. I did hire an excellent publicist during the launch. And, while that is an investment, I did feel it was really helpful for me to just get a foot in the door to a lot of places that might not even look at my emails otherwise. It really helped build my profile and get noticed around the launch, I think. After that, it's definitely been, hustle every day and really think out of the box and look at different types of opportunities. So the Substack obviously is a place to promote the book. And, when I write a newsletter every week, and it's free now. So I'm always saying something about the book, some news, keeping people in the loop, maybe events, stuff like that. Sometimes I'll do giveaways and things like that. Social media, although it's not my favorite place to be, so I probably should spend more time on social media. But that is, I have a lot more respect for it now after publishing the book, because getting PR and doing events and all that, so much work, it's so expensive. And at the end of the day, it's hard to get people to show up. And with social media, it's free. And, whatever your engagement is, you are reaching some people. So it's definitely a platform to use effectively. I've done some virtual cook-alongs on Zoom, like one every month for the past few months that have been doing really well. And, I actually really like that connection with people. So yeah, it is, a hustle, but it has been going well. I think the book got some great coverage. It's been on a couple of best lists without even being pitched. So I was really excited about that. And it's gotten some good reviews. I've tried to get people to write reviews. It's like pulling teeth, but, I think some people have done it. It's been good, so far so good. I don't think I can retire yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever can, honestly, but it's been great. And, I wouldn't change it for anything. It's put me out of my comfort zone selling, which is, I think most authors don't enjoy selling. So it's felt good, but I've kind of put my business hat on and said, this is my first product.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got an offer to write another cookbook like soon after this one came out
Nice.
from a traditional publisher. It was a smaller publisher, not a big advance or anything, but it still felt really good.
Yeah.
So are you going to do it, or are you going to keep with the hybrid model, or what are you thinking?
No, I might do it at some point, but I just couldn't jump into something so soon. So very reluctantly, I turned it down. It was definitely an interesting concept, and it would have been lovely to just jump into another project. But, I felt like I could not do the promotion for this one justice if I took on another one so soon. So yeah, hopefully in the future.
I also feel like the title of your book, The Vegetarian Reset, it's really great for bringing it up again. The reset,
Right.
every
Every January and February.
Exactly.
season change every
It's a
quarter.
perennial, right? It's a perennial title. And I think this kind of book seems like it's going to be a very strong backlist book.
I hope so.
And I don't know how that would work with hybrid, but it almost doesn't matter, because when people can find the book online, they can order it. So something like that, it feels like a very evergreen title.
Yeah. And just even in your own marketing, like you could create little meal plans from the Vegetarian Reset, and it's like a meal plan right from your book.
Yeah, it's a great
Lots
idea.
of possibility.
Yeah.
You didn't go down the print-on-demand path, but I wondered what the price for the book would be. I would imagine that if you're getting a book printed on demand, the purchase price for somebody like me going to buy the book is going to be a lot higher than, say, if it was published with a traditional publisher. Or maybe $20 book becomes a $50 book if it's printed on demand. I don't know. Did you look at the numbers that way?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I'm glad you asked it. So printing on demand is more expensive, and I think every copy is printed in the US, so it is going to be more expensive. So just for comparison, if I wanted to do a hardcover print on demand, and I was pricing out all of these different options and it was a full color cookbook. That's the other thing. So I think we had priced it out at like about 40 or 42, something like that, in that neighborhood for a hardcover. And it's not that far off from, typically I think it's like 28 to 35 for the average hardcover cookbook. But the thing in there is that in that $40, there was no margin. So, so the cost of printing was close to $40, and Amazon or Ingram would be making pretty much all of that markup. And I wouldn't have even tried to earn anything from it. As long as I wasn't losing money per book, that would have been, that would have just been what I went with. So I was definitely going to have a paperback. The hardcover is more expensive. The paperback is more, I don't know, it's still more expensive than, I guess, traditional paperback, but it was more affordable, like 20 something.
Right. And then you don't have that quality control isn't there, because there could be a difference in a batch of books that's printed different times of the year or the following year. Maybe there's printer issues with the printers that they're using. It's hard to say. I mean, that's the thing about cookbooks. When you're doing a 4-color book, they're just so complicated to produce. And some printers might just be better than others. And sometimes and you don't want your quality of your book to suffer, but you wouldn't be able to control that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just didn't want to deal with the hassle. Well, with print on demand, I guess, I might have gotten some nasty reviews saying, my cover was on back to front, but there's still not a whole lot I could do about it.
People who are traditionally published still get negative reviews on Amazon or whatnot because the way the book was packaged and delivered to their door, it has nothing to do with the book. Like 1 star, the corner of this book arrived damaged.
True.
Issues can crop up anywhere, or the books could be traditionally published and like Melissa Clark, they all end up at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Oh my God. I was so worried about that because it was just the previous winter, I guess, that there were all these supply chain issues. And I did know of quite a few schedules that got pushed. And this was such a January book, I needed it to be out in January. But just thankful that all of that worked out. But yeah, like you said, every new year is an opportunity.
Yeah. So would you do it again, this model?
I think so. I had a really good experience. I think I've learned a lot through the process. So I know what my expectations would be, and I might do it again. I also have an open mind, now that it's no longer like 3 to 5 months and I do see myself in the field long term, I might have the patience to actually try the traditional route. So I don't know. I do have a couple of ideas, but I'm just holding myself back from getting started on any of that.
How do you see your book in your overall business strategy now? Is the book the main driver, or is it part of the whole package?
Yeah, I saw the book as a way to launch my brand and platform and just for people to get to know me. I think having a book also gives you that additional level of credibility. And, if I send an email saying I'm the author of The Vegetarian Reset to somebody, it opens more doors, not every door, but more doors than if I said I have a social media account with 10,000 followers, So I think it's the foundation that I'm starting from. I do want to grow my community more, in particular on Substack, launch a paid offering at some point, maybe do those meal plans, thinking about other like digital products at this point, maybe courses and cooking classes and things like that. I do want to write more books. I do have a couple of ideas that I'm kind of ruminating on, but each one, you guys know this, it's like having 2 babies. It's a lot. So I do think, though, that the whole process, it was such a learning experience. I've definitely learned more in the last 2 years than I learned in the last 10 years. And I still wake up excited every day. So it's definitely something that, I hope will continue.
It is really interesting because books are such a credibility builder or an authority builder, or kind of instant when a book comes out, to, like you said, say author. But because social media is more and more important, there is this sort of like chicken and egg thing for a lot of people. So like they need to build up the social media to get the credibility to actually get the book published.
Yeah.
But it seems like hybrid publishing is a nice way if you can financially make the investment.
Yeah, that's a big one with hybrid publishing. It costs as much as sending your kid to college, at least.
Yeah, what is the ballpark? What is the range that somebody would look at? Is it everything from, say, 20,000 to 100,000?
Yeah, I think you got the range exactly right. So I would say if you were self-publishing and you were really scrappy, maybe you hired a couple of professionals, but kind of on the lower end of the range, you could do like 20 to 25,000. If you hired, slightly more experienced professionals, or you did some kinds of hybrid publishing, it might get up to 50. If you did like the full scale hybrid publishing, like you started from conception and built the whole book out with a hybrid publisher and then paid for printing. And if you wanted to hire a publicist, and we're talking 100. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's definitely an investment. I think of it as exactly almost like a college education, because you're just not going to make money from that project. I have like no hopes of doing that. If I even get close to break even, I'm going to be lucky. But at the same time, I didn't break even from my college experience here for a long time. it's a big hole. And so what fills it is the learning and the experience that I don't think any education or training could provide. So just doing this whole thing, making those connections in the field, it's basically like being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. It's sort of
Much like running a business,
right.
know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're the dishwasher, you're everything in that business.
Right. So everything ends up like the tax season must get really complicated. You're like, well, this was a lot of expenses to build this business. So
yeah, I'll be writing off things for a long time.
Right. Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit just about the recipe development. I know that we jumped into the publishing side, but just tell us a little bit about how you sort of even learned how to write recipes. You were coming from such a different field. You love to cook, but that's just a big leap. And you did it in such a short amount of time to just get up to speed on all these things. So how did you do it?
Yeah, I've always loved cookbooks. So, I knew the general format. When I started, I really wanted the recipes to look like these recipe cards that you get, from like a Blue Apron or something, where, you have a picture, so you know what the dish is supposed to look like, ingredients on the left, method on the right, just kind of digestible. And when I started, I actually produced like recipe cards for some recipes like that and put them up on my Instagram. So I knew what I wanted the look and feel to be. In terms of actually writing the recipes, it was a huge learning curve. So I did devour Diane Jacobs' book. I think I read a couple of other books as well. So I knew about, listing the ingredients and things like that, trying to make it easy for somebody to actually make it like you would. I think my biggest learning came from the recipe testing process, really. So just to back up, when I started this, I developed the recipes in about 3.5 months. Then I had my photo shoot, which really brought the whole thing to life for me because I could finally see all of these recipes looking so beautiful. And then I thought I was almost done because, I had the recipes, I just had to put them down and I could see the finish line in front of me, but that was like a mirage. And after that, it took me a good 6 months to actually get all those words down on paper. I had volunteer recipe testers from around the world, actually. So I was doing this diet initially that it was like this Facebook group. So I'd post on the group saying, I'm going to write this book and, does anybody want a recipe test for me? So there were people from Australia, from the UK, from the US. Some of my friends tested half the recipes in the book. It was so amazing. And I felt like I deepened my connections with many people through the process of writing the book, which is something I'm really grateful for. And those testers, they didn't hold back. So I had some pretty big disasters in the way I'd written certain things or what I hadn't realized I was doing as I was cooking, but hadn't actually put it down in the recipes. So a lot of the learning came out of that, and I rewrote and I rewrote and I rewrote until I was getting sick just looking at those recipes. I'm sure you guys know.
Yes.
I just could not look at them anymore. So that was a big part of it, just that kind of process of refining the recipe after getting it tested. But I also went through multiple rounds of editing. So the first copy editor that I hired, I asked her to take a look at the book after I'd written the first 25 recipes. And I said, just do one pass at this so that I know what to do for the remaining, because I literally don't know my head from my toe. And, I'm writing this. So I need you to just point me in the right direction so that you don't have to overhaul the entire thing at the end of it. So that really helped. And so I was using the first 25 as a template and wrote the rest down after that feedback. And then it went through another round of editing when I started with the Collective Book Studio. So I think we got it to a place finally that is reasonable. But when I started, I was just trying to keep the sentences as short as possible and try to fit it in one page. And, that was my priority.
Yeah.
But I slowly learned that, it's really important to get people to make it the way you would.
It's so true. I remember the first time I tried to write recipes for a cookbook, and it took me so long to just even figure out simple things like, how do you tell somebody to slice? Do you slice the onion? Do you put the sliced onion in the ingredient list? How big does the onion have to be? Like all that, it takes so long. And that's just like one line in one recipe. You've got all these other ones to write. I would say that writing cookbooks never gets easier per se, but what changes is that there's certain things that you kind of get the fundamentals of like recipe writing, and that part can go smoother, because you went through your own little boot camp, your own sort of university degree in writing a book.
I wanted to ask, for the photo shoot, did you cook the recipes or did you have a stylist?
No, I cooked everything. My photographer also helped with the styling. So it was like running a restaurant. I did hire an assistant to help. So we shot the 75 recipes over like a week. And so, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, there would be like so many dishes on the counter, and my fridge is not big enough to hold all of that. So we had to figure out what to do with the leftovers and then shop for the next day. It was really fun, but just looking back, I think I got through it on adrenaline. I just don't know how I did it, but it was really fun.
Where did you find people to work with you on this project?
Yeah, so my designer and copy editor, I hired on this platform called Reedsy. That's REEDSY. It's like a platform for freelancers, kind of like Upwork, except it's just for books. So you can go on there, create your project with all of the specifications, and then invite different types of freelancers, whatever you need to submit a quote. And then once you have that, you can negotiate, go back and forth. And there's options for different price points, different genres. And, you can essentially see kind of a resume on there and some examples of previous work. So I did that. And that turned out, really well. I was able to hire some really, really talented people at a reasonable price point.
That's really interesting. I've heard of Reedsy. I've never gone to look at it, but I've heard of it for, say, fiction authors or people writing novels or memoirs looking for help on that side. But I didn't ever think of it for cookbooks. That's really smart.
Yeah. I mean, it was like the first thing that turned up when I Googled. So, I just went with it and it worked out. The photographer was harder. I'd reached out to a few people. They were not available. I was desperate. And then I posted on a mom's group, like a local New York City mom's group. And this pastry chef who had previously self-published a cookbook, recommended her photographer to me. And that's how we got connected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And there's a whole time you're building community. So you're coming from a different field. And at first it feels like I don't know anybody. But now you probably, the list of people in the field, including us.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of these things started with just cold emailing or cold pitching people. So it's definitely, starting from scratch like that and building up this network and community. It's been invaluable. And I've always been surprised at how kind people are and, how much knowledge they're willing to share. And, it makes me feel proud to be part of this tribe because, everyone's so great.
Well, I do want to ask if somebody wanted to do a hybrid route, what kinds of questions should they ask? There's different hybrid publishers. Maybe not all of them are equally as good or as adept at selling cookbooks or making beautiful cookbooks. So what kinds of things would you recommend somebody looks for? Because you've done all the research into self-publishing, certain things that maybe people should think of if they're interested in going the hybrid route.
Yeah, so I think transparency is really important. Hybrid publishers, I think they run the gamut from, being almost scammy in some cases, and some they're not really adding that much value. They're just being kind of a wrapper around these Amazon or Ingram print services. There's not that much of a value add. So I would ask those questions about, do you have distribution? Do you partner or do you have like an in-house sales team? That's really important. I would ask for a lot of transparency in terms of the numbers, like the costs of printing, the royalties, for ebooks, for print books, at what point you get that information, transparency in sales data, which is something that hybrid publishers can give you They can give you a report of how much has been sold to retailers. And just look at the team. Do they have experience? Have they come from other publishers? Because the whole process of producing the book and marketing the book, it's very technical. Everything from these trim sizes, like, for example, it was a whole revelation to me that books, like the printers could only print like pages in multiples of 8.
Right. Like such a random thing. You wouldn't know that. Why would you know that? Yeah.
My cookbook had 102 pages. Oh, that's not going to work. Somebody's got to know that kind of thing. And so the whole process is so technical. And the whole reason somebody is going down this route is because they either don't have the time or, they're new and they're trying to break through. And, you want people who have made those mistakes and have the experience to really guide you through the process seamlessly. So I think looking at the team and really asking for transparency in terms of the numbers and not being afraid to negotiate because you are bearing a lot of the risk.
That makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of when you can see those statements, with traditional publishing, you got to wait every 6 months for a royalty statement. Is it the same with hybrid publishing, or do you get to see it in real time, how many books you're selling?
So I can get a report every month on how many books I'm selling, but it's not the same as the royalty statement. The royalty statement, I'll get like every 6 months, but, I can do the math and figure that out. So I think getting that information from the publisher is really useful because with BookScan, you only know how much is sold to the end customer and it's still only like a percentage. Right. So, you just never really know the numbers until you get the royalty statements. So I guess it could be different with different publishers depending on the systems they have and all of that. But royalties, it's only been like 4.5 months now, I think. So I'm still waiting for that check. It would be nice to get my first check.
Right. And this time you will get a check. A lot of times, when it's the 6 months out of a book that I publish, I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to get a check on this one because it's too early for it to have earned out. For you, that's not the case.
Yeah. But it is, nice to receive a check instead of writing one.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you guys asked some really great questions and I hope this was helpful.
Oh, yeah.
To whoever's listening. And I'm always happy to answer questions if people want to reach out.
So if people have questions specifically about hybrid publishing or your path you took, just reach out and we'll have all the links in our show notes for people can find you, find your Substack, find your book and reach out.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, happy to help because I feel like I have to pay it forward.
Thank you so much, Vasudha, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so lovely.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. Send us questions or comments through our website, everythingcookbooks.com. You can find more episodes on our website or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. Any book mentioned in the show can be found on our affiliate page at bookshop.org. Thanks as always to our editor, Abby Circatella. Until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.